y'all are joining us. So many other places you could be. Yeah, so many things you could be doing. So, good evening from Bali. I know it's probably early in the morning from the other side of the planet. So yeah, let's get started. My name is Kevin Orosz, and this is my lovely lady, Nadine Lee. And this workshop is going to be about Tantric Polarity and how to maintain, define, and ignite polarity. And we'll go into what that is and what it means in relationships, out of relationships. And it looks like we have a pretty intimate group. So if you're just joining, please turn your video on if you feel comfortable and type in the chat box one word, what you're grateful for and where you're tuning in from. And we want to do a Q&A towards the end of the hour. And yeah, we're going to start with a little embodiment practice and some breath and a little meditation just to anchor the energy. And yeah, is there anything you want to share, babe, like an intention or what you...
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to just set the intention around, polarity. Like, we're exploring polarity, and I find it really timely just with everything that we're exploring right now on the planet. Polarity is being amplified right now. What does that actually mean? Like, in the context of what our intention is for this workshop is in relationship and the masculine feminine polarity. But I feel there's like something deeper that we're alchemizing in this group around polarity and opposites, and like how do we dance in polarity in all spectrums and meet in the middle. So maybe like if you could share also your intention like for this workshop, like what are you wanting to get out of it? So that gives us an idea of where you're at, and how we can best kind of like weave with that. So I would love to hear from you all. So
great. Yeah. So I just want to invite everybody into upright position. If you're laying back, that's good too. Just aligning the spine. We'll just close down the eyes and just arrive here on this call together, wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is. Just really arriving into the body. Coming into this space digitally together, into this time, into the present. So whatever was happening before this, just smoothly entering this space, whatever's happening after. Just let that be there. So we'll start with a big breath into the belly. Big exhale. Again, a big breath into the belly, just expanding 360. Big exhale. We're just going to make some noise on the sigh on this one. So big breath in. Just let it sound out. Go ahead and hold that breath out. Exhale fully. Keep exhaling. Holding empty. We'll take a big, huge inhale in. Biggest inhale today. Go ahead and hold this one at the top. Sip in more breath. Just letting go of that.
Okay, so I want to just invite you into now feeling into, you can actually stand if you want for this, or like just sit where you are. It depends, it's up to you. But like, I want to invite you into feeling and embodying, what masculine energy feels like for you. So, maybe you want to stand up, maybe you want to like, just sit and just hold yourself up. Maybe, like whatever it feels like, that masculine energy of directness, like presence, structure, like how does that feel in your body? And just start to, either move like that or stay in stillness like that. Just start to like feel that energy. What does like the qualities of masculinity feel like in your body? And just start to just meditate upon that and feel it in your being. And so masculine energy is really, you know, it's seen as that, like, it's that fire and it's that directness. And, you know, the masculine polarity really is held in that, in the sacral, in the lingam, like in a male bodied being. So, you know, you might want to focus on that area, even as women, like it's that directness. How do you penetrate the world, you know? So feel that, what that feels like, feel like an energetic lingam, essentially. And obviously for men, like your actual lingam, just feeling that center, feeling masculine energy within your body. Meditating upon that. Maybe you don't feel it at all, you know, like, especially for women, there might be like a disconnect to that polarity. And for men, you know, it's like, we're talking about energy here and qualities as opposed to like male and female. So feel those qualities. What do they represent to you? How do you express your masculine in the world? Like, how do you show up in presence? How do you penetrate the world? Breathe in and then exhale. Breathe in and exhale. And now switching into the feminine polarity. So just starting to breathe up from the lower centers up into your heart space. So resting your hands on your heart, maybe placing your hands on your heart, opening your chest. You can take your hands back and just starting to meditate on the heart space. So this polarity center, which is the feminine center. So where the feminine, you know, rests and gives and penetrates through her breast, through that heart energy. And it's the same with men, just feeling into that capacity for unconditional love. You know, we all have both masculine and feminine polarity. So feeling into your body, noticing, you know, your body might soften. How does that feminine energy feel in your body? How do you relax into your feminine, of this energy of receptivity, of sensuality, of sexuality, of unconditional love and compassion, intuition, creativity? Like, how does that feel? How does that express in your life? How do you express those qualities in your day-to-day life as a woman and a man? I'm just noticing which, if you feel, yeah, like I expressed that pretty well, or I don't feel I'm connected to that energy at all, you know, just feeling that, breathing into your heart and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And one more deep breath into the heart space. And exhale. And now taking one hand over your lingam or yoni, so your genitals, and the other on your heart, and just feeling the breath now combining both. So breathing deep into your belly, expanding it, and then breathe it up to the heart, and then exhale. So it's like a two-part breath. Breathe in, and then exhale. Breathe into the lower centers, upper centers, and then exhale. Breathe in, lower, upper, and exhale. And again, breathe in. And just really inquiring into yourself, where you feel most, where do you rest, what energy do you rest in the most, and where do you feel maybe most out of balance? What do you need to cultivate more of, more qualities? The feminine qualities of intuition, creativity, spontaneity, receptivity, or is it the masculine qualities of, you know, presence, penetration, service and mission and structure? Just feeling into that in your day-to-day life on a practical level. What is, you know, most prominent, and which one, you know, you feel you want to cultivate more of? And just taking another deep breath in And exhale. Okay.
So yeah, Nadine's already been kind of talking about it, but it's really important to unpack some of these terms, right, that we hear all the time: masculine, feminine, polarity, yin and yang. What do these terms even mean? And I want to share my perspective, and we'll share kind of our perspective and philosophy here, which we have a lot of shared reality, and we have our own beliefs too, which is, I think, healthy to come to your own understanding of this. Because really, the way I see polarity, the dance between masculine and feminine energy, um, and for this talk, I'm going to be speaking in energies, right? So genders, sexuality, preference on that level. This is not like political speech or something like that. So I'm inviting you to really situate yourself in the conversation. Um, and for teaching purposes, we're just going to use a woman in her feminine and a man in her masculine, man in his masculine, for like the examples, right? So the basic idea, as Nadine was sharing, is like, we all have both these energy poles in our being. And in fact, all things do. If you're in physical reality, right, there's a duality, there's two poles. And for human beings, maybe you were raised like I was. I was born and raised in Texas, where men are men, right? Any idea of a man expressing any kind of feminine or yin energy was seen as, at the least, offensive or weak or like confusing, and at the worst, like completely, something was really messed up about that, right? Or there would be, something projected upon that. And same thing for women expressing a masculine energy. When the reality is, we're all expressing both of them all the time. And so there's an energetic of masculine energy, which is very decisive, which is very focused, which delineates. So masculine, this is a great way to remember this, the energy types or archetypes, which is really what I think is a good perspective to think about, is they're archetypal energies. They're not just, gendered energies in beings. It's an energy beyond the body. Masculine, right? Line, linear. The masculine energy is really good at linear mastery. So mastery of time, focus, dedication, determination, aggression or assertion. There's a physicality or a very like pointed energy, right? Just like the lingam, it's a very pointed energy. And so it's a penetrative energy. It can also be very mental. It's logos, is the way the ancient Greeks looked at masculine energy, right? And feminine energy, as we know, is much more circular, right? So feminine, and these are fun ways to remember it. And I also think there's secrets in etymology, right? The language and history of words. 9 is a line with a circle, right? The number 9. So feminine, it's the circular energy meeting the linear energy. And so feminine energy can be more expressive. It can be more fluid, spontaneous, feeling, intuition-based, more emotional. It's more of the eros, the erotic life force energy. It's the way the Greeks looked at it. And so we all have both of these expressions, right? And you can think of your mental layer, your masculine energy, is very much how you plan, how you relate to the world, how you use language, how you relate to time, and how you relate to a single point, right? So if you're in a void, if you add a single point, that's a masculine line of focus, right? Line of sight or line of focus. All this stuff is contained in language, and I think it's clues to the pattern of this energy. Whereas the feminine energy would be seen as the void, right? If the masculine energy is the ship sailing and maneuvering through time and space on the ocean, the vast void, which can be chaotic, which can be vast and full of life energy, that you can think of as the feminine, right? It's also very emotional and feeling based. So that's a basic working definition for the two. And polarity, as we know with magnetics, right? With magnets, polarity is the polarization of those magnetic poles in relationship. So their proximity, their distance, their frequency, their vibration will determine much of that energetic, right? Is it really fast polarity and really intense and it's an ignition energy? Or is it very slow, grounded polarity? And you can see this with couples in relationship. You can see this with colleagues at work. You can see this with people in your community, your neighbors, friends, loved ones. Everyone is as a type of polarity with each other, right? And what we really want to bring this back to with all this work with Tantra, it's useful in a relationship, but it's really about the inner world, right? So how do we bring our inner polarities, our inner yin and yang, mind and heart is one way to look at it, thoughts and emotions is one way to look at it, mind and body. How do we bring those into a healthy polarization inside of ourselves? And that's going to be unique for each of you. So, yeah. Is there anything you want to add to that, babe? That's a basic definition we're working with.
Yeah, so I want to just share a little bit about, so how we have the inner, can you put it back on that? Yeah. So we have the inner masculine and feminine energy within us. So I was born, as a female body being. He was born as a male body being. And, in Tantra, the way to really bring ourselves into that union point, and this was talked, in the Tantric, like the Tantric texts and like the Tantric practices and all this. And also through, the works, the psychologists like Carl Jung and Freud talking about, like, was it Jung, the anima and animus? Yeah, Carl Jung talking about that anima and animus. So the inner masculine and feminine. He was talking about these things in his psychology. And he talked about, for a woman to come into her full feminine expression, it's actually about embodying her masculine pole. And then for the man, it's about him to come into his fullest masculine expression is to embody his feminine pole. And it's not that a man turns really feminine and expresses as a woman, and it's not like a woman expresses as a man, but it's like she has that cultivated within her, the masculine energy, and then he has the feminine energy cultivated within him. And then that allows you to rest deeper into your dominant pole, which is, what you were born in a female body. And that's, biology affects that. Like our hormones are different to a man's body. So there's biology that like we are actually more feminine, like hormones and physiology and all that. Like it is, you can feel very masculine, but like at the end of the day, like women's bodies biologically are more cyclical. Like our hormones, go in a cycle each month. Men's hormones stay flatline pretty much all month. So we have these biological differences, but what I've really found on my journey, has been like, I teach feminine embodiment and feminine tantric arts, but I've noticed, for myself to embody the deeper aspects of my feminine being, I had to really work on my masculine pole, which was developing things like my discipline, my direction, my purpose, and my consciousness, essentially. So the upper chakras, and that helped me, like, because I felt this strong masculine energy kind of moving through me. I felt safer to drop deeper into my deepest feminine essence. Whereas when I was just working in feminine embodied, just the feminine energy, it was like there was no containment within me to hold that level of Shakti, essentially. So it's like the feminine, this Shakti, this yin energy is pure erotic energy. It's life force energy. And if you don't have like a level of consciousness, which is the container to hold that, then it is just a swirl, and it's just like an out of control energy. And so women would often I would look for a man to hold that masculine pole, and then that's what would create codependency, a codependent relationship. And it's same for men. If they haven't cultivated that yin, the qualities of creativity, of intuition, of trusting, their intuition, of a capacity to be in their heart space, then it's like they're going to constantly project the goddess, the feminine on the woman, and then it will create an also codependency relationships. So the essential idea is like cultivating these polarities within ourselves first, coming into an inner union, the inner marriage, and then we can actually get into a relationship with someone else that is based on co-creation as opposed to codependency on that level of like polarity dynamics that are playing out. And what we see, you know, what we've come so far since, like, you know, the 1940s, when it was like, you know, women were the housewife and they just were the caregiver, that's it, they didn't work. Men was the breadwinner, he just did the masculine stuff, she did just the feminine stuff. And it's like, you know, within 60 years, 80 years or whatever, it's like we've evolved so much since then. And we're realizing as our consciousness evolves, we're not actually just one dimensional or one polarity. Like, we actually are multidimensional. And it doesn't mean that we don't need like a man anymore, or he doesn't need a woman anymore. It's that we can actually come together in a more co-creative capacity and a conscious relationship, as opposed to, I need you to fulfill my the lack of masculine. I need you to provide for me. I need you to just fulfill all those parts of me that I haven't cultivated. And then that creates codependency, and that actually kills polarity between the two, you know, and it's unhealthy essentially. So for us, it's like we dance between like I'm more in my feminine essentially, and he's more in his masculine in the relationship. And it's like we dance, but we still dance between the two. You know, sometimes I'll feel more in the masculine, he'll feel more in the feminine, but it's like predominantly he's more in the masculine energy, I'm more in the feminine energy. And then it's like there's a dance, you know, and it's like I'm not afraid to step into a masculine energy if I need to. He's not afraid to step into a feminine energy if he needs to. And it's like you can dance in those, you know, those polarities. So what we see in society and conditionings, you know, even this is playing out now, is like things like, I know for women this is a common thing, and maybe for some men, but it's like women, the feminine energy is more about connection. You know, it's like connection is a high priority for the feminine. And then for masculine, it's more about freedom, you know. So how do those two polarities play out? It's like these are two opposite ends of the spectrum. So like how they play out is like, I just feel I just like lost my train of thought.
Well, this is good because this is bringing up, you know, some of that core desire of these expressions, right? And for the feminine pole, expression and connection and that spontaneous like life energy, like moving towards, is going to be really important. And in the extreme, it becomes utter chaos and there's lack of direction. So you can imagine a very feminine woman who maybe is artistic or something like a dancer, a lover, like, you know, very expressive, tons of feminine energy, but with a lack of a masculine awareness of her animus, which these are terms from Carl Jung in the collective unconscious. It's basically the inner image of a man in a woman, which is imprinted by the first male caretaker, usually the father. If she's not aware of that or hasn't awakened to that or has complete immaturity around that, you might see things like lack of financial security, lack of physical safety, lack of decisiveness or any kind of discipline because of that overflowing feminine energy, which can be a beautiful thing, but taken to an extreme becomes actually quite harmful. And you can imagine the opposite of a man in the extreme masculine without awareness of his anima, which is that inner female archetype or image. A man who's pure masculine, maybe he's a pure warrior. You can imagine like a soldier or something who's just constant training, constant structure, but has no access to emotional freedom or expression or spontaneity. He actually becomes very rigid and ossified and starts to really suffer at a deep psychic and emotional level. And so either extreme is actually very dangerous. Pure freedom and pure control and discipline becomes very toxic. Pure expression and pure connection and like engulfment becomes very toxic. So I like to follow, you know, the 80-20 rule, that 80% of my expression is going to be in the masculine most of the time. So I'm going to be driven, dedicated, disciplined, focused. I'm going to be physical. I'm going to be really potent with my voice in a masculine way. And then 20% of the time I need to go yin. I need to practice self-care practices. I need to be in creative flow energy, which is something that actually, as my journey in the tantric space and the yoga space and in personal development, was a struggle, because for many men, when they first open up, and I can only speak for myself as a man, but I know a lot of my clients have expressed this. As a man, when you first awaken feminine energy, it can actually overtake you. And you see this with the men, which we have plenty of examples here in Bali, you know, lots of love, who have just gone full artist, yogi, expressive, and their feminine actually starts to possess them. So the key here is that you still stay polarized and in balance. Even as a man, when you're accessing feminine energy, for most men, and again, this is a heteronormative template we're sharing here, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you're not heteronormative, you know, situate yourself and figure out your geometry. It's going to work in a similar way. You know, you're going to need to come back to masculine energy as a man and let that be your predominant energy. One way to talk about it is, as a man, I'm presenting my yang, like the yang energy, but I have awareness and I'm holding the inner yin. So I'm still aware of the feminine essence that is the yin, right? Has nothing to do with being a woman. It's a yin energy that we call the feminine. But I'm presenting and leading with masculine yang. And it's a dance. It's going to be different for everyone. This is why I love personal rituals, practices. Really, my voice for me is a way that I use to harmonize back into a good polarity. But I'm curious from a feminine perspective.
Yeah, so what I see a lot is, and you know, I experienced it as well, like when the masculine energy possesses the woman, you know, I think it's what you're sharing about, you know, men on the spiritual path or just feeling that feminine. It's like, oh my God, it gets possessed. It's the same thing can happen with a woman. And I think that's actually part of the polarity balancing process, because if you've lived your life just like grown up, identify with just masculine energy, it's like any polarity. You have to go to the full spectrum of the other sometimes, like full feminine as a man, or like woman, like go to your full yang, and then, you know, it's like the pendulum. It's been here for so long, and then it's got to like swing all the way over here, and then it starts to come back into the center. Eventually, you're going to balance out. It's like you might have experienced this on your journey. You know, you might have been full, you know, mainstream or whatever, and then you've gone full spiritual, and you just like burn all your possessions and just become a hippie, and then you're just like, and then it's like, oh, okay, like I'm coming back into a middle ground eventually. Like all polarities need to come back in the center point. But for a woman, yeah, so I feel like as a woman, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, you know, we have a lot more ways to express our masculine. We can run businesses, we can make our own money, we can be very masculine in the world. But when it comes to relationship, I want to be in my feminine, you know, so that feminine essence. So when I'm like out in the world, like doing my work, I'm exerting yang energy, but still staying rooted in the feminine. But like when I come into my relationship, I'm not going to bring my work and bring my masculine energy towards my relationship. So I think this is one of the confusions that are being made. And then it's like the women are wondering, like, why isn't my man showing up? Why isn't he stepping up? And it's like, you have to step into your feminine in order for him to like be in his masculine, because otherwise it's two men trying to like fight for like, you know, the dominance. And it's like, it takes that, that exploration and like, and understanding how to rest in your feminine in your relationship. And it's things like, you know, a simple example is like, if you're just dating someone, don't try to control the situation. Like, don't tell him where you want to go. Let him lead, you know, let him like choose the restaurant, or wait for him to call. Like, don't push it, you know. It's like feminine is receptive. You don't have to actually do much. It's just, it's more about, it's more about being, you know. It's like the way I see it is like, if you're going fishing, like you just like put out a line and you make it known you're interested, but then you just like sit back and wait for the fish to like bite it, you know. It's like, show you're interested, put a little bit out there, but then sit back and wait and rest in your feminine receptivity and trust that. And this is a journey, and this is a very like, you know, it's an art really. And you know, I used to make that mistake when I was younger. I had no idea. I would like push it and just like control it, and yeah, like, and I wonder, why aren't these guys showing up in their masculine? And like,
Because you didn't give them a chance.
Yeah, because I was like trying to control the situation. And so, you know, this has been a learning, and I think it's powerful because we are in a time where we can express masculine energy as women and do all the things, but it's like what I notice within myself and also with many women I work with is like we yearn to just like surrender into our feminine energy when we're in a relationship. And that is not that, it doesn't mean that you're just like sitting back and just like have no choice and you're just silenced and suppressed. It's that you can literally receive consciousness, like, and that means even through love making, like surrendering so deep into your body, into opening yourself and receiving this man's consciousness into your being and allowing that to just like blast you open and just take you onto like into like a like a whole nother dimension. And this is really when that alchemy happens, and the consciousness, you know, in a partnership, the consciousness, the lingam, that's his, where the man holds his consciousness is in his lingam. That's that masculine energy penetrating. The yoni is open and it's a dark void. It's like pulling in, it's receptive. And that's that physical symbol of like the merging of the opposites. And that's why, you know, we dance in that, the two, that's the physical representation of it all. But it's like how we're making love, like looking at how you're making love. Like, are you, are you first inviting a man to come to your heart first, the feminine pole? So, you know, to open up your full sexual center as a woman, it's not through just like a yoni massage technique. It's actually like, it's actually inviting a man into honoring your heart space. And that means like, you know, getting to know me and honoring me as a goddess, and like really inviting him into a vulnerability space within yourself. Being vulnerable yourself invites him to, you know, do the same and actually honor your vulnerability and your feminine emotion. And then once you feel safe and seen and heard in that feminine essence, then the yoni and the sexual center can open fully to that man. And it's all emotional for women, you know, it's not about, so it's like, you know, like with Tantra, there's a lot of like, oh yeah, become multi-orgasmic woman and all these techniques. And it's like, no, it's actually like an emotional, energetic, deep bonded trust that creates that opening for a woman. And for a man, how does he hold his consciousness? Is he like directing, or is he clumsy, you know, like in the bedroom? Like how present can you be? How strong in your physique can you be? Like, how can you hold this woman and like dance with her, but still hold that structure? Like, this is where it comes to like looking at how we're making love, you know? And yeah.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is another dynamic of the polarities, is like the woman's desire for connection and emotional closeness, intimacy. And for the man, that desire for freedom comes from presence and consciousness. So we have this amazing duality, polarity space to play. And, you know, one way to think about polarity is like, it's the hot and like sexy and just like, whoa, like feeling, right? You're on like a rocket ship of desire and physical and sexual attraction and intimacy and power. There's a deep aspect of power to it, like authentic power, right? Like mojo, libido, energy. And so when there's a lot of polarity, right, it can be very, very intense, and like there's a lot of charge. So the way to navigate this charge is the feminine, and this is happening at the same time. It's like quantum, right? If you think of a vesica Pisces, like the middle space is where the charge potential is happening, and then the two forces are like fully exchanging and working in harmony. And this can work during attraction and dating. It's the most obvious place in a relationship. But this happens in a lot of situations. You can see this with two sports teams. You can see this with, you know, the art and the artist, the creator and the creation, right? This is a deep code in reality. The masculine initiates. So there's a movement, there's a presence, a word, an action, eye contact, something to initiate. And when that initiation happens, it starts to stimulate the feminine. So the feminine becomes stimulated. And, you know, a lot of women, as you were saying, can really fuck this up by trying to initiate too. And it's like two men like clashing swords. And that energy isn't very useful when you want to create the deep polarity vibe of a magnetic force receiving the initiate. So the feminine becomes very awakened and stimulated. And you see this with like the gopis and Krishna, right? The females dancing and sweet perfumes. It's very sensual. It's very earthy. It's very in the senses. And it's that Shakti of Eros energy, which then sure enough, what does that do? That stimulates and activates the masculine even more. So then he can receive that energy and then start to lead presence, consciousness, speech, action. And then it proceeds from there, right? And it happens. And who goes first isn't necessarily important, because a really strong, seductive feminine polarity can actually pull in and activate a masculine. So that it can start that way. It can also start with the masculine just being like super clear, like, I want this, I'm gonna get it, boom. And if the feminine wasn't in that magnetic seductive mode, energetically, she will come into that quickly if she's able to sense it and shift into her feminine. So yeah, I think we've painted a really good picture of how it can work. And I do want to open a space for questions. So if something's already, yeah, and like we're gonna share about like how this works in relationship and our experience of it in relationship. But if there's a really like pressing question or something really specific you want to learn about or something's unclear, type that in the chat and we'll get to those in about 10 minutes. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to just speak into that whole thing around, so, you know, like what I was going on before I lost my train. So it was like the feminine's desire for connection and the masculine's desire for freedom. So, you know, they're very opposite energies. And so how do they work together? And that comes back to like, you know, me feeling as a woman, like my connection to freedom and to the masculine qualities, I can understand when he needs freedom, then I can understand that, because I know how important that is to the masculine energy within me. Whereas when I didn't have a connection to that, I would always just be like wanting the connection, and like it would just be, yeah, codependency and very imbalanced. And it's the same for a man, you know, wanting the opposite way. So like not understanding connection. If he's just so in his freedom, it's like, well, do you need a woman? Are you just going to go and meditate in a cave? Like, what's the point? You know, it's like, so he needs to understand what connection feels like. So this is how the two can actually, you know, co-create together and co-weave together. And I just wanted to share just some stuff about like how we like cultivate polarity, like in our relationship. So one of the things, you know, that we usually is a conditioning, I feel, is like, so, you know, you've been dating for a while and it's like, okay, well, I suppose we should live together now. Or even like, oh, we live together, so that means we have to sleep in the same bed every night. And it's like, where do these beliefs come from? You know, like for me, it's like, yeah, that's what my mom and dad did. You know, they lived in the same house, same bed. I mean, you know, like practically, like, you know, we had 3 kids in our family. But at the start of a relationship, you know, where you can afford to kind of like, you know, get bigger spaces and like you don't have to live together if there's no children involved, you can play with those energies. So for us, one way we cultivate polarity, and like for me to like maintain my connection to feminine and my like myself, and him to connection to his masculine, his self, is, you know, we went traveling for 6 months. Like 6 months after we met, we went traveling for 6 months. And each time we would get a house, we would book a house with like 2 bedrooms. And so we had that option to sleep in separate bedrooms. Like, you know, maybe we did like twice out of the week, sleep in a separate room, but just to have that spaciousness to recharge our energies, you know, and recharge. Because if you think about two magnets, if they're like always together, they dissolve the charge. But if they're apart, it's like, it builds the magnetism. So you need to like have a bit of spaciousness between the togetherness, you know. So that's one way we have done it. And, you know, we've chosen at this point, after traveling, you know, to have separate houses. We live in Ubud, we're like 5 minutes down the road. So it's like, you know, we're still in our separate spaces. And that helps, like, yeah, just like maintain a bit of that polarity. That just feels right for us for now. But, you know, if you're living together, there's still ways that you can develop that polarity together and maintain that like mystery. And it's things like literally like having your own practice, like something that you do that is yours. And it doesn't have to be always with the partner. You know, for a woman, like there's things you need to do with your sisters. For a man, there's things he needs to do with his brothers. He can't expect me to be a bro. I can't expect him to be a sister. It's like, no, I need sisterhood for that. He needs brotherhood for that. So having sisterhood, having brotherhood, having your own practice in the morning is really helpful.
Well, that might be the most important one.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're unique in that we're both manifestors in human design, which if you know about that, and we actually thrive in our own energy space and just our own like inclinations as entrepreneurs, creators, artists, you know, leaders. We have a big field, so we need a lot of space apart to cultivate that. I need a lot of space from her to cultivate my like sharp edge. For some couples, that won't be the case. You can actually really form a closer orbit. So that's going to be really unique to you. But the one thing that isn't unique, that is widespread and is the most missing in modern culture, as I found out painfully myself, and as I've done this work now for years, is the men's and women's tent business circle. You know, the men and women's work, right? The brotherhood and the sisterhood. You have to have it. And for a lot of men and women, when they go into a dedicated relationship and it gets serious, they abandon their core male and female friends on a bigger to lesser level, right? So in an indigenous setting, and make no mistake, like we all have indigenous ancestors, we all have this software and hardware still in us. It has not been that long since we lived in tribes on a big scale. So a lot of our brain is still wired to connect to those core people. For men, it is that hunter's circle. It is some of that war energy of like, let's gather and accomplish something. A lot of that has been, you know, for horrible reasons in the world. And a lot of that's been for survival and protection and strengthening bonds with the masculine. And now we can do this in new ways. And it's the same for women. Women used to gather to bleed together, to literally gather, weave, craft, create, do oracle and divination work. There's a long tradition of any culture you look at, I don't care where you look in the world, that has been lost in the modern of the men and women's circle. So that might be the most key thing I see for a lot of you out there, whether you're dating or you want to date, or you're in a committed relationship, married already, is to actually be a stand for that. So you source your energy from the brothers, from the sisters, respectively, and you encourage your partner and hold a space to do the same for them. And this what this does is like, and this has been studied scientifically, when men are around other men more often, being colleagues, business partners, doing martial arts, doing practices together, their testosterone goes up, their literal masculine juice, right? And it's the same with women. When women gather with women and they share and they talk and they do activities together, you know, their testosterone goes down and their cortisol goes down, they de-stress, and their estrogen and their oxytocin goes up. And so we have all this evidence that we are these tribal creatures, and to repolarize and recharge, you know, maybe the core thing that kills polarity the most is codependency and making your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your wife or husband your therapist. That is the core essence that, and there's many layers to that, right? But that's maybe the core thing that can really depolarize and decharge the relationship. Because we're all looking, you know, everyone's libido is different erotically, but we're all looking for that erotic life force energy. No matter what the relationship looks like, that is a core essence and a healing force in the relationship. And how do you maintain that and charge it and keep it flowing? Well, you've got to have your own core energetic of masculine, feminine pumping and flowing. And ways to do that, we've shared a lot. Maintain distance as well as togetherness. Have practices, have a discipline and training regimen, have support from the brotherhood or the sisterhood. And you know, you can take this to many different levels, but for most people, I think just establishing a baseline and creating language, like there's been a lot of languaging in this talk that I would invite you to use around how to name this stuff so you can claim it in your relationship with yourself first and then with a partner. So I want to re-invite everyone. If there's a question, Carolina, I think you typed in the chat. Not sure what language that is, but
Yes.
if you have questions, please type them in.
Well, there's a question from Madeline: to understand how I can embrace a man's masculine energy whilst.
I think that was her intention. It's like some earlier. But yeah, we can talk.
Ask here if it's okay.
Yeah.
So basically I wrote in Polish, sorry, it wasn't to you, it was to my friend. But I wrote that actually, thank you for sharing about this spaciousness. I'm also in Bali and I'm with my partner, and recently we rented 2 rooms. It helped a lot to have the space, and I'm curious, what are the other possibilities to create this polarity for you guys? Besides the spaciousness, what do you do? Yeah, I'm curious.
I think it's like, yeah, so spaciousness, and I don't want to just like, because the spaciousness is the masculine, and you're saying, you know, like, yeah, you don't want to become each other's therapist, but that's also going to the extreme of like discounting the feminine, because feminine actually needs to express and needs to feel heard. So I want to just make a note on that we're not, it's not just so masculine polarized.
It's balancing it.
Yeah, but like, it's not like, oh, you're not allowed to talk to your partner about things, because that's just creating like a lack of intimacy. So it's having a balance between the two. And yeah, some other ways to cultivate it is just for you as a woman, like really, yeah, having your embodiment practices. So things that connect you to your feminine essence to like really like charge up that energy. So things like, you know, the jade egg practice, or erotic dance, or like your creative expressions, like things that make you feel really sensual and feminine, and like in your feminine essence. Maybe it's like, you know, getting your hair done, or like makeup, or whatever, like that you feel just really tapped into that. And it has to, and having that as like a practice like that you do like on your own essentially. And then for men, like the same thing, like, you know, going with brothers, or like going to work out at the gym, or like focusing on your mission, like these things, having those as a high priority. And for a man to understand and hold space for that and encourage that. And then for women also to encourage that for the man, you know, like, and really like see that that's a good thing. Because, you know, like when you come back from like brother stuff, like I can feel his energy is like, yeah, it's like really like fiery and masculine, and I'm just like more, I can drop deeper into my feminine because he's holding that pole really strong. And same when I'm like, you know, in my feminine and going really yin, and he's like fully in his masculine. So one of the ways is working with your menstrual cycle as a woman. So when you're bleeding, going full yin, like this is the time to literally just like take 1 to 3 days of receptivity, ground, like just like self-care, not doing anything, just being, meditating, just relaxing, taking a bath, like. And then you'll notice, like I noticed with you, like you go full yang in like the most yang that you are, like expression, because I'm so in my yin, I'm not like pushing anything. I'm just, so having that as you're working with your menstrual cycle. And then when you're ovulating is when you're full yang, is like you're actually at your peak yang as a woman. And that's when you can tap into that more. And that gives your man like, there's like usually like a window, like one day where like I'm like so organized and so in my like, you know, yang energy, and he's just like, oh, I want to sleep. So it's like one day a month
polarized.
he's on his moon.
Well, a man actually does have a moon. It's the yin, and it's when your moon, whatever sign rules your moon in Western or Vedic astrology, you can look at, you know, when that is in the month. And there's actually a very peak time to be yin, even as a man, especially as a man. You got to recharge with those adrenals. Big problem in the modern world. So it's an excellent question. There's so many layers to this, obviously, but yeah, if you want to get more specific with an ask, we can go back into that. So Sophie's asking, how does it sit with you to discuss relationship polarities with sisterhood and brotherhood? I feel maybe I've taken a step back from my sisterhood in order to respect my partner by not discussing our relationship and differences. So yeah, this is a really important one. And again, the hard and fast rule for this doesn't exist because everybody's going to be different. What's really important is you have agreements and communicate around it. So I think it's really important that you trust your partner's friends and you get to know them. And, you know, we're still doing this. We're learning to meet and trust each other and those brotherhoods and sisterhoods, right? Which are all over the world and in our local community. And we've spoken about like what is okay and isn't okay to share. And that's an ongoing conversation, you know, and I think it's obviously in balance. Again, if you're sharing way too much and just dumping and complaining about your partner, yeah, that's going to be really toxic because then that group of people is going to be like, wow, like how can we relate to them? They're going to create a negative energetic. But then also, if you're not sharing at all and you're just keeping it all good and hey, we're cool, and you know, the magic word here, the magic sauce for all this stuff for communication is stay in I statements. I feel, I think, I saw this, I did this, I am being this. Stay to your experience. When you start talking and projecting on your partner with a bunch of you or a bunch of we statements, like, oh, we always, or we never, you always, you never. These are phrases and energies. Remember, language is spelling, you're spell casting. So if you stick to your own experience and share authentically within your partner's boundaries and agreements, then you have nothing to fear or worry about when you're sharing with others. And that's really healthy when you find that center point.
Yeah. So just Kara asked, can you share about codependency and how it shows up? So yeah, like I mean, what I shared about that example of if I was codependent on Kevin, it would be like an example of that would be like, you know, just say I didn't know how to financially support myself as a woman. So I was like depending on him to basically look after me, like feed me, clothe me, like do everything like a father would essentially, or like a parent would. I depend on him for something. So, you know, maybe I have a business and I've employed him. He depends on me. Like this creates some strange like codependent dynamics within the relationship. And then it's like, yeah, like it's another example.
Well, I mean, when you say like, how does it show up? How does codependency show up? I mean, ask yourself this, because codependency usually is surrounding core wounding, right? So for the feminine, that's often abandonment. And for the masculine, that can be loss of freedom, right? Loss of direction, purpose, whatever. So how does codependency show up? It shows up around the wounds. So if something's happening and you feel dependent on the other person for an energy, for a type of attention, a validation, whatever, and it triggers some of that wounding, and then there's cords there, whether there are unspoken unconscious agreements, there's projections, there's all kinds of layers here, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, however you want to frame it. But codependency will show up because you'll feel disempowered, or you'll have high expectation and low tolerance, right? And we want to actually have the opposite in relationship to be really healthy, is high tolerance and lowering expectations, still keeping expectations in your integrity. But if you have really high expectations and low tolerance, and there's a lot of blame, shame, or guilt vibrations, those are some red flags that usually will point to some kind of codependency, even if you can't see it.
And there's also like going codependent with each other's wounds. So, you know, this thing called trauma bonding. So, you know, we all have trauma, we all have wounds. But if you're literally like finding a safe point and like a love point over your wounds, this creates a codependency over your wounds. So it's like that is an unhealthy dynamic that can play out, like going codependent with each other's wounds. So for example, like, you know, if I have an abandonment wound, like my wounding is around being abandoned, and then his is around like I don't know, smothering or something. And then we like kind of like bond together over like our wounds together. And it's like this, oh, we feel like safe in this, and we can just like feels like drama, feels like love, you know, that's that kind of mental, you know, when you're like, oh, you know, it's got to be hard. We've got to always be doing the shadow work, and always like, this is what relationships are about, because, you know, most of us had parents that were dysfunctional, and we think that's love. And that's actually bonding over trauma of like what we've seen, and making it okay that it's like, it's just unhealthy. And that's trauma bonding. So codependency there.
Yeah, that's a whole wormhole. There should be a whole talk on codependency. So any polarity rituals together, I mean, the ultimate number one polarity ritual is making love, I would say, by far. Working out together, dancing.
Also, so another thing that, you know, we do is erotic dance. Like I erotically dance for him. So he holds like full masculine presence, and I like dance for him, like seduce and be fully in my erotic energy and seduction energy, and just like beauty and radiance. And that's a powerful ritual to do, where masculine is holding full presence, Shiva consciousness, and then I'm in full like expression, feminine eroticism. So that's super powerful for couples.
Any shared activity that cultivates presence and consciousness and cultivates play, like play is really powerful, and that erotic innocence to come up is gonna polarize you, right? And if you do that together, then you just like basically practice being in your masculine as a man. So lead, direct, speak, present your energy, penetrate. And as a woman, practice being in your feminine, erotically play, share, feel, express spontaneously. And you can do a lot of different versions with that. The magic formula is breath, movement, sound, and silence. Put on your favorite song, make eye contact, dance, breathe together, move together. You're gonna find your own kind of custom way. And she loves to erotically dance, so I love to receive that.
And so this is another one.
This is a great question.
So can you share how a woman can lead with her feminine and keep her masculine behind her feminine, and an example of what this looks like? Yeah, so so you're in a masculine, I'm assuming. So like one of the ways that I shifted out of that was like, I talked about like that I felt like for a while when I was single, like I felt like my masculine was cock blocking me. like the inner masculine in me was like too protective, and that no men would come close to me because he was at the front, he wasn't on the side. So I like did this ritual, like, okay, I honor this like protector energy within me, but like you need to stand to the side, you know, not like in front of me, so no physical men can come into my space. So that's a powerful thing to do if you're single. And then in a relationship, leading with your feminine, so that requires like allowing him to take the lead, you know. So what I like to do is like express a desire. So like, I really desire this, or like, oh, it feels so good when you do this. And then it's like, he'll take the action, but I've like stated it from a desire, not from like a demand or like an aggressive kind of energy. It's like, oh, I really desire this. And it kind of plants a seed. And then he's like, oh, okay, she likes that, so I'm going to do that. And like, you know, lead. And then he gets the chance to actually lead and be in his masculine, make the decision. Whereas I'm like planting the seeds and like just suggesting things like in a like more stealthy kind of way. And then he can actually,
sometimes not so stealthy. Not so stealthy sometimes. And yeah, from the opposite perspective, great one, Pat. You know, if you're a man and you want to keep your feminine awareness but not let it lead, you know, you got like, this is the number one code. And I see this having done a lot of different men's containers in person and online and coaching and all these things. You know, the number one thing I see with most every man is not being decisive. Yeah. So as a man, like I've trained myself, you know, with the 5-second rule, with just breath, embodiment. Okay, act, boom. Like staying in motion and momentum in the masculine direction of just boom, boom. You got to move, speak, and act with intention and with presence, and hopefully with integrity and authenticity. But if you're stuck in the feminine storm as a man, if you're stuck in feeling, or you don't know what to do and you're not containing your energy, that can start to possess you and weaken you, especially if you want to accomplish anything. Say you want to do something related to wooing a woman and being with a woman, or if you want to create impact, income, or inspiration, any of those ROIs, return on impact, income, or inspiration, you've got to be decisive. And it's as simple as making one strong decision and sticking to it no matter what. Good news is you can make another decision very soon that can change your course if it doesn't suit you. So cultivating the masculine energy and keeping it in the forefront is acting from intention and decisiveness, which is coming from your presence and consciousness. It's not letting things just flow and float around. Like, you actually need to create order. You need more order in your life. If you're feeling as a man and your feminine's not in support, it's actually taking center stage. So,
and that's like also just with that, just you know, it's good to have, like, I see a lot of the time men going, the full extreme of that, being very like, you know how to make decision, but they're not attuned to that intuition, the feminine. So it's like,
that's where the balance point
it's
comes
like
back
you gotta be listening still and then take the action, not like, okay, this is what we're doing, and then it's like the woman's like, what, like, that's not what I'm feeling. So it's like you still have to have that 20% of that feminine, like listening and like intuition, and then take the action. The way I see it is like the feminine's really like leading the relationship from the emotional intuitive center, like, and often very like consciousness center, in a way of like what's actually serving us as a, like, from that mystical kind of space. And the masculine kind of puts it into action, like into tangible, real fucking like real time stuff. So it's like, that's what I was saying, like feminine being more like, I'm feeling this, like I'm feeling this is where it's going, and then he's like putting in the action steps. So it's like that's where that kind of dance goes together, when it's in harmony. Sometimes it doesn't flow that way, but that's the that's the ultimate,
Yeah, so I want to invite anyone, if you have any last questions or comments, please type them in the chat. This has been amazing with y'all. We're going to start closing up the container here, but the last question here from Tess that I see is, what's your view on initiating as a woman, a man, into Tantra, not losing her femininity when he's completely unfamiliar? A bit similar to what you're saying now. I mean, as a man who was initiated by a woman, both one of my mentors and an ex-partner, was a big impact and inspiration in my path as learning more about this way of being. It's very simple. For most men who are masculine led and dominant and have a lot of mental energy, they need to act and see it. A lot of men just need to experience it. And so as a woman, if you can invite him in with your polarized feminine and be like, hey, I want to introduce you to this simple practice, eye gazing, breathing together. Here's a very simple sexual practice, and make it fun and playful and not heavy and like going to a yoga class. That's going to do a lot. And for men, most men, I know for me, for sure, the theory and the philosophy and the consciousness behind it is very important. And so really, if you can introduce him to that in a good way and let him go at his own pace, and as a woman, like she's saying, not losing your femininity. Well, if you want to stay in your feminine, don't go into masculine and try to lead, structure, and order the man into the tantric way.
Yeah, and that's where the dance, like erotic dance, is a powerful way to initiate a man. So men would go to these temples that we see now as strip clubs to be initiated by a goddess. And it was like seeing a woman in her full eroticism invited him into his highest self, because he's seeing a goddess incarnate before him, like moving, the Shakti energy moving through a woman's body, and it calls him into his presence. So you're embodying it. You're not actually talking or speaking about it. And when you can dance on your partner, it's like you can, like, you're holding that, he's holding that presence for you. And the more, you know, energy you can move through your body, it invites him deep into presence. And then, you know, you can take his hand and like show him how to touch you. Like, how do you want to be touched? Like, you know, while you're dancing, and even, you know, if you're just exploring, like let your hand like guide his hand over you. Like, this is how I want to be touched. This is a tantric way to touch a woman, you know, not just like groping me and like, you know, it's like it's through your body that you invite a man. It's not necessarily through, okay, now we're going to sit down and we're going to do a tantra class, you know, because then the man's going to contract because he'll feel like, oh shit, she's just turning into my mom, telling me what to do. You know what I mean? So it's like using your body, and that's a journey, you know, for women. It's like being comfortable in your body, like feeling what it feels like, pleasure feels like for you, and then it's like when you feel that confidence within yourself and how you want to be touched, how you want to be pleasured, how you want to be made love to, then you can actually guide a man into that using your body as opposed to like words. So that's been a powerful shift for me, like just with men and working with men, you know, in this many years ago. But just, I mean, most of my partners have been initiated, but still, you know, there's different ways that women want to be touched, and we're all different, so we learn each time. So that's what I would say.
And going to education classes, workshops, etc. together, the best way.
Yeah,
it's a way to connect, and you have a neutral party, and you both learn, and you can practice with each other. So it's amazing. Like I think there's one couple here who's doing this together right now, which is amazing. And so
that's another one.
Yeah, really grateful for you all, seeing your faces here and just feeling y'all's energy. This is such a powerful time to be alive, you know, and to speak to the times that we're in. Wow, a lot of polarity out there, but maybe not the polarity that we all would like, which is like the very tense, like here's good versus evil energy, or like, you know, that the racial charge and even the virus pandemic energy of like the polarity of like, well, you know, I'm right and you're wrong, you're good and I'm bad, blah blah blah, right? That's a different kind of polarization that, you know, it's harder to see the erotic and the archetypal in that energy, but make no mistake, it's the same process, it's the same energy, just kicked up 20 levels and playing out on a cultural, social, economic, etc. level. So I think a lot of this work, doing it in relationship, that's how we shift consciousness on this planet, which has never been more needed and more on blast as a solution, you know, than right now. So the fact that you're all taking the time to be here and tune in with this information is a testament. It gives me hope. And yeah, from our hearts to yours, just sending y'all blessings and hope that, you know, this has been really amazing. You know, I know it's being recorded, so there's a lot of information here, and all of you, I'm sure, will get the recordings. So yeah, babe, you have anything to close with?
Yeah, I just want to share that just around like what's in the collective, like this dissolution of like, all polarity in all spectrums. It all starts like within us first. So this one that we're very familiar with, this masculine, feminine, how do we come to union within ourselves first? And then when we shift our self consciousness into a state of union, then we can actually create real change on the planet in all levels. So, you know, this is the power of Tantra and conscious relationship and, you know, the inner marriage, the inner union. Essentially, it's always about inner union. We just have, we have partners we dance with and we practice and we like amplify with. So really want to just leave with that. And should we share that? Yeah. So I do work mainly with women, and you know, I've got some beautiful courses for women working with how to tap into this. Sorry, there's a bike going past. How to tap into, you know, your erotic energy, how to awaken your feminine radiance and magnetism, and work with your menstrual cycle, work with your sacred sexuality. So I have a couple of really beautiful courses for that, which is Temple of the Womb and the Creatress. So you can head to my website to check all that out. It's called tantricalchemy.net, my website, and I'm on Instagram, tantric.alchemy, for any other stuff. And we have a workshop or a retreat actually for couples in December in Bali called Archetype Tantra, which is, well, it's for couples and singles. We changed it. So couples and singles, and it's really exploring the archetypes and how they play out in your self and how that overflows into your relationships in all spectrums. So your intimate relationship and your like business relationships, everyday life, relating to life essentially. So that's going to be juicy.
Yeah, so if you want to find out more about that, you can go to archetypetantra.com. For me and my work, I work with men. I have a men's container only that's coming out soon with some dear brothers I'm collaborating with, which is really exciting. But also a lot of my best clients are women. I work with people one-on-one in like VIP containers to build, their brand, their image, their personal mastery on all levels in wealth, but also in relationship, right? So I work a lot with routines as well. And there's a whole module on Tantra and practice and bioenergetics and breath work in my online course, which is flowstatemastery.com. It's basically 6 weeks to master and just pimp out the best morning routine you can have to maximize polarity. And so you can also go to myname.com, Kevin Orosz, OROSZ.com. You can see more about my coaching events, my courses, and get on my newsletter. And yeah, I think we're both tagged up in the festival, so you can find us. Instagram's the best place, but we're on Facebook as well. And
just put our Instagrams there.
Yeah, so yeah, we're really grateful for y'all. And, again, to bring it back to the times, this is the work, right? This is the work, the mirror of masculine and feminine, the polarization of our world. It starts within. And so if you can do this and realize it on an inner level that is not just spiritually bypassing and cool concepts, but is energetically, physically, and emotionally integrated at a core level, we're going to see a lot of healing on this planet between men and women, between all people. And this is really what the game's about. So grateful for y'all, sending y'all love from Bali. And yeah, y'all enjoy the rest of the festival. There's so many great talks coming and so many epic souls in here. So
thank you so
much.
We'll see y'all soon. So much love. Thank you.